Now, Iron Maiden have made a lot of good albums throughout their long career. They've released 15 studio albums, and of which there are some absolute masterpieces that are some albums of metal that I would say are some of the best albums in the entire heavy metal genre, and some albums that are just kind of weak, memorable, and feel like the band aren't doing what they're capable of. And so I'm going to pick 10 albums and that I really like. I like all these albums. And one thing to note is that I didn't just go look at my scores that I gave for my Iron Maiden reviews and then just match it up into a top 10 list. I didn't even look back at my scores. I just went in, think about what albums I like. Now, I want to stress this. This is completely subjective, and this is my top 10 list. This is not some kind of definitive list. I'm not saying which is the most popular, which is the most influential, or which is like some kind of objective goodness, even though I don't think there is an objective goodness in music. But yeah, this is just completely subjective, what I like. Comment down below your top 10 list or top 5 list or whatever. But anyway, let's just start with number 10. Somewhere in Time is Iron Maiden's 6th album, and is definitely a very interesting release. Now, while it's definitely nowhere near as good as its follow-up, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, the synthesizers that we used were extremely good and added a lot to the music. And I know 10 seems pretty low on the list, but this is still actually a really good album. Some weaker moments in terms of the writing not being as good as it previously was, but still stylistically very good. Everyone performs great, and yeah, this is overall a really solid album, though it's definitely less memorable for the 80s, but still a good album. And let's move on to number 9. Virtual 11, the second Blaze Bayley era album. This album is often cited as being one of Iron Maiden's weakest, and I really don't know why this is. A lot of extremely good moments on this album, like The Klansman and Como Estas Amigos. And yeah, it's the low point in their career in terms of commercial success, but there's still some great writing. Blaze performs brilliantly. The rest of the band's performing great. You know, Yannick is actually a really good guitarist, and he does a good performance. And yeah, this album is just really good. A lot of just strong writing, even though it doesn't feel as classic as some of the 80s Maiden stuff. It's still actually a really good album. So let's move on to number 8. Brave New World, Iron Maiden's sort of comeback album. And probably some of you would have expected it to be a bit higher, but Brave New World, when you really look at it, is quite a safe album. And what I mean by this is, it's not very adventurous. It's kind of staying in Iron Maiden's comfort zone. It's just really fast, upbeat music, really melodic, good music. But it's not, it doesn't feel like Iron Maiden, when they made this album, decided to do something really different, which you don't have to do something different to make it good, because Brave New World is still definitely good. I mean, it's number 8. So yeah, Brave New World, just a really good album, a lot of great writing credits. Bruce's voice is just amazing, by far his best vocal performance of all the 21st Century albums. Everyone else is performing great. The three guitar lineup is amazing, and Brave New World just feels like such a return to form for Maiden. Even though Virtual 11's not a bad album, it's not like Virtual 11 was terrible and then Brave New World went back to writing good music. But the way this album is with Bruce and with Adrian just feels like a comeback album. It feels like Iron Maiden reborn again. And so let's move on to number 7. Now, a lot of you will definitely say, Peace of Mind, number 7? That's way too low. But yeah, I really like Peace of Mind, but the thing is, Iron Maiden has so many mind-bogglingly amazing albums. That Peace of Mind has a couple fillers on it, and Peace of Mind kind of was for me always the album between Number the Beast and Powerslave, and is not as good as those albums. It's definitely a great album, you know. Some of best Bruce's vocal performance. Everyone else is performing brilliantly on this album. Obviously, the Trooper's on this album, so come on. So yeah, it's just an amazing classic release. But for me, some of the writing credits felt a little bit weak, and it just didn't feel like... It didn't feel as good as they could be. Which we'll definitely talk about when they are as good as they could be later in this list. But anyway, that's Peace of Mind. I know I didn't really explain myself very clearly. And again, these are just really quick sort of summaries, talking about, you know, why I put them on my list and what are good about them, why they're on my list. If you want more detail, go to my actual reviews that are also in the Iron Maiden playlist. So anyway, let's move on to number 6. And then, number 6. A Matter of Life and Death is definitely Iron Maiden's best album of the 21st century, as you can probably tell. And this album is exactly what I said wasn't, kept Brave New World from being a bit lower. This album is so different, and it is kind of like the X Factor, so I guess it isn't that different, but it feels like Iron Maiden doing something different. It's so adventurous, the complex and progressive writing is just absolutely amazing. Yeah, Bruce's voice is getting really old. Yeah, the band's starting to not perform as amazingly. But this album, the music, the writing, it's just amazing. It's just fantastic. Dark, deep, amazing music. Just an overall brilliant album. So yeah, Matter of Life and Death is just a brilliant release. And so let's move on to number 5. Iron Maiden, their debut album. Now this is actually one of the few examples where I gave Iron Maiden a 8.5, but I gave Peace of Mind and A Matter of Life and Death a 9, but Iron Maiden's actually higher. And this is because I just like Iron Maiden more. That's just the way it is. I think that Peace of Mind Peace of Mind and A Matter of Life and Death are objectively better albums, but I just enjoy listening to Iron Maiden more. I mean, Iron Maiden. I mean, you got Phantom of the Opera, Prowler, Charlotte the Harlot. It's just a classic album. Paul Di'Anno, brilliant performer. Rest of the band is just brilliant. Steve Harris' bass is, Steve Harris's bass in the early days is just unparalleled with the rest of Iron Maiden's catalog. So Iron Maiden's just a complete classic, and yeah, brilliant album. So let's move on to number 4. The Number of the Beast. Very popular album, definitely. And we're not even going to talk about the controversy. Let's just talk about what I like about the album. This album is pure classic. It's what you show to someone when they're getting into Maiden. Some of their best songs ever, How Be Thy Name, Number of the Beast, Run to the Hills. But in the end, it is a bit like the Brave New World. It's very easy to listen to. It doesn't feel that different or instrumentally complex, and it doesn't have to be good. Like, Number of the Beast is just a great record. Listen to it. It's just such an easy listen. Bruce's voice, brilliant. Rest of the band performing great. Yeah, just a really, really classic album. Great artwork. And yeah, Number of the Beast. Do I really have to talk about it that much more? It's just a pure classic. So let's move on to number 3. The X Factor. Now, this is my longest review, the 19-minute review. And definitely check out that video if you want more detail. But The X Factor is a monumental album. It's just a real shame that albums like No Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark, which aren't that bad, especially Fear of the Dark, are going to get talked about so much more than The X Factor just because Bruce is on vocals. Blaze Bayley is a brilliant vocalist and a brilliant lyricist, and the rest of the band performing and writing some of the best music that they've ever written. Obviously, with Steve Harris' history, and it was at a very dark time, and this is Iron Maiden's darkest album by far. And it just makes the music stylistically so brilliant, so complex, really progressive too. And so yeah, The X Factor is just a complete masterpiece. You really have to be in the right mindset to listen to this album. I can't stress this enough. You can't just put this album on and listen to it. You really have to be in the right mindset. But when you are, and you listen to it, and you really give it a full chance, you'll realize that it's absolutely brilliant. But anyway, let's move on to number 2. Now, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son is a beast. It's an absolute beast. It's a concept album, and it's Iron Maiden's only concept album. And let's not even talk about the concept, because what's more important is that the music and the writing's brilliant. More complex than anything they've done before at this point in Iron Maiden's career. Obviously, the synths are so much more mature. The whole sound feels like Summer in Time, but more mature. It feels like they really got their head in and really made some really good music. The keyboard synths are brilliant, and the instrumentation is legendary. Bruce's vocals, though not good as Peace of Mind, Powerslave, are amazing, and they're just amazing. Everyone's amazing, but even more than the amazing performance, it's just the writing, the whole vibe, the atmosphere created, and the concept is good too. So yeah, Seventh Son, it's just a work of art. It really is a work of art, Seventh Son of Seventh Son. Probably more than their other albums, but it really is amazing. So let's move on to number 1. Was there any doubt? I mean, Powerslave. Just Powerslave. I mean, it's Iron Maiden's classic album. And the reason why this is higher than, say, Number the Beast or Peace of Mind is because, for me, in some ways, it was a bit of a transitional album, though it's more the amount of variation that there is. I talked about this in review, but you got tracks like Aces High, 2 Minutes to Midnight, that are just fast, upbeat, classic Maiden. Bruce is screaming his face off, and everyone else is performing great. And then you got the really complex stuff, like Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, like complex guitar lines all over the place, and some weird progressive stuff that's just amazing. But yeah, just a brilliant album. I mean, this album, you just listen to it, and then you need time to think about why it's so brilliant. The variation, the performance by the band is the best performance by the band on any Iron Maiden record ever. I mean, just a performance. But the writing, too, is absolutely amazing. It feels like that classic early Maiden, like that first 5 years kind of Iron Maiden, that really classic stuff, but also fused with the stuff that they would do later in the 80s, the more complex stuff. So, Powerslave is Iron Maiden's just most monumental album. I mean, Number the Beast is what you show to people getting into Iron Maiden initially, and then you move them on to Powerslave, where some of the more complex stuff is, how I would do it. But yeah, Powerslave. It's Powerslave. If you haven't listened to it, what are you doing listening to me and not listening to these amazing albums? I mean, seriously, why are you still watching this video? In fact, if you haven't listened to 1 to 5 at least, just get off this video now and go listen to those albums. Yeah, that's my top 10 list. I hope you enjoyed. See you later.